Welcome to 1 Hour to Relationship Wow. We're so glad that you're here, and you might have seen this class posted in many different places, and we're so glad that you're joining us wherever you're from. Let me just make sure that the recording has begun. Oopsies. How do I get back here?
And those of you who are listening to the recording, if you're not able to make it live, you'll be able to hear everything in its entirety.
Great. Okay, so today's class is going to cover 1 hour to relationship. Wow, what is the most positive difference that you could make for your relationship in 1 hour? That's really what we want you to accomplish tonight.
And we want you to hold on tight because it's an 8-step journey, so it's really important that you listen to the duration till the end of the call to be able to hear everything.
Wonderful. And again, for those of you that had just popped on, we're not going to be taking any questions during the webinar because we tend to get distracted because we have like a little screen that keeps popping up as we go along, so we sometimes get distracted by the questions. So we're going to take questions at the end. We're going to go through the entire presentation, and then hopefully if there's time, and for those of you that wish to stay on, we will answer your questions. So we're going to start our 8-step journey. But first, I want to say that some of you are new to us and may not know who we are. I didn't even say my name. I'm Rivka Slatkin, and
I'm Shlomo Slatkin. Many of you are on our list. Some of you have been on our list for years. Some of you have just signed up today. Others have just found out about this webinar from other sources.
We want to answer maybe what you might be thinking is, who are we? Why are we qualified to even teach you this material? And have you heard us speak before, and where? Are you familiar with our approach? Actually, let me ask you, I know I said we weren't going to take questions, but send us a shout out. Have you heard us speak before? It'll just help us better tailor the material for you. Have you heard us speak before? Where? And are you familiar with our approach? Let me give you a minute so we can just take a look at your responses. All right, let me take a look at these answers. Oh, wow. Okay, so we have a lot of people that are really don't know who in the world we are, have never heard of us, never heard us speak before, are totally not familiar with our work.
Some of you read articles we've written.
Wonderful. Okay, so this is very new to many of you.
Great, so it's exciting. You're going to learn a lot of new material tonight that will be really helpful for your relationship.
Great. So I'm going to go with that and really let you know who we are and why we're qualified to be here today. Really, it's about Shlomo, my husband, and he's the one that's really qualified. I'm just his sidekick, I guess.
Rivka's the one who did the magnificent presentation, so you can thank her at the end for all the wonderful slides, PowerPoint. I could have never done this myself.
Well, we all have our strengths. So Shlomo is a psychotherapist, a marriage counselor. He has a master's in counseling psychology from Loyola College in Baltimore, Maryland. He's also an advanced clinician in something called Imago relationship therapy. So for those of you that have never heard about Imago, it's a type of marriage methodology, and it was founded by a man named Dr. Harville Hendrix. And Harville Hendrix has written a very famous book, very widespread, over 30 years ago, called Getting the Love You Want. And his method, Imago therapy, has been featured on Oprah back when her show was there many times. It was one of her top 20 best shows ever. It really transformed, I think, the way the world treated marriage and understood marriage. So Imago is just this amazing methodology for marriage.
Helping couples and also families and individuals.
Right. So we'll tell you how he got into it in a few minutes. But anyway, so Shlomo's been in practice with couples for over a decade, and he only works exclusively with couples and relationship issues. And that's important. And I guess I can come back to that, or I might just say now that it's really important because there's a lot of therapists out there that kind of, once they graduate school, they can make a business card and hang up their shingle that says working with, individuals, couples, and families. Well, individuals is one thing and couples is another. It's a very sensitive field. Um, a lot of therapists actually don't want to work with couples because if you've ever been to marriage counseling before, you know that the sessions can get very complicated. They can get very heated. So it's really a unique specialty. So I want to emphasize that he works exclusively as a specialist with couples, and that's really important. Um, Here are some of Shlomo's works and the places that he's been featured in the media. So I mentioned Dr. Harville Hendricks. He was the founder of Imago Therapy. So the first book on the left is called Couplehood as a Spiritual Path. That's actually a training that Harville asked Shlomo to create with him for Jewish couples. So if you're not Jewish on the call, that's fine because tonight is not a class geared just for Jewish people. But he asked Shlomo to work with him and create this course. So they co-authored it together. The next book is a book that we give away for free on our website, but it's called The 5-Step Action Plan to a Happy and Healthy Marriage. And that's a book that Shlomo wrote, and it's a wonderful book. If you haven't read it yet, please go ahead and download it. Then there's the Jewish Marriage book. That was one of his first books that he's written, but if you are a Jewish couple, that's a really fascinating book. And these are some of the programs that we've created together. The 5-Step Action Plan to Saving Your Marriage is also on our website. It's an audio-visual at-home marriage counseling program. And these are just some of the other places that he's been featured in the media. So I think it's personally very impressive. I forgot to show them our screen so they can see us. Let me
The
just,
video?
yeah, let me just say hello. It's just so you know that we're actually here with you. It's kind of dark,
I'm gonna fix the video camera.
but we just wanted to say hello. So, can you see, Shlomo?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So now I'm going to hide the camera, but I thought I would just let you see us for a second. And here's one of the places that he was speaking. So he's very accomplished. I'm very proud, but really, really experienced. And that kind of leads me into our story and how we got here tonight. So I'm now, very comfortable in sharing this because I've shared this with many people over the years, but we ourselves experienced some pretty serious marriage conflict shortly after our first child was born and also later. Shlomo, why don't you tell them a little bit about our story?
And this is really why we're here today. And although Rivka said it's all about me, it's really about us, because if not for Rivka, we would not, and the two of us together, we would not be here. So these kids on the right they're our second generation, our little ones, but our older ones are not pictured here. But basically, we had troubles like any young couple has in the beginning, and we worked through it together, as we'll explain. But also, we had some rough patches a little bit later in life, before these three were born, and we were able to, through the work that we learned, through the work that the Imago therapy that we did together originally. That's actually how we got to this. That we went to an Imago therapist. A friend of ours told us about Imago. I was in school for counseling at the time, and the therapist said, why don't you do the training? Because we were so blown away by it. And I wound up doing the training, and that's what, that's brought us here today. But that has helped us sustain our relationship through thick and thin over the years. So that's why we're so passionate about this work, because we've seen what it can do for our relationship and, of course, for all the couples that we've worked with. So I'm missing one. I thought something disappeared here.
Oh, we're missing a slide.
Yeah.
No, we go right here.
No. So we discovered what worked for our marriage at its core. It wasn't just a tip that we read somewhere or average marriage advice, but it really was something that was transformational that we experienced in our own relationship. And then we started applying it working with couples. So we're excited to share with you today that when you're going to discover this one thing, everything in your relationship can change. And it's really what has kept us together through everything. But before we before we reveal that one thing that made the most positive wow for our marriage, and that's what you're here for tonight, to learn about the the wow that you can create in your relationship. It's really important to understand a prerequisite for any marriage to succeed. The absence of this is the number one cause for divorce. This isn't something that we just kind of made up, but this is something we're going to share you is from a study. But we'd like to ask you first, if you could write in the question box, what do you think that is? What do you think is the number one ingredient or the number one thing that causes divorce or the lack thereof?
Yeah, go ahead and just give us a shout out in the chat or I think questions panel. Yeah, do it in the questions panel and go ahead and answer
Right,
Shlomo's question.
right. And then if you have any other questions, we'll save the rest for, if you have any other questions that you want us to answer, please save till the end if you got on later. We're not going to deal with them right now, but so a lot of the things that we see right now coming up, respect and communication from multiple people, money, lack of trust, lack of loyalty, selfishness, not caring for the other, another communication.
We're seeing a lot of communication, so if you're experiencing that, you are not the only one.
And communication is definitely a big cause for a breakdown in a relationship. And we've actually, our readers have shared with us before we did a survey that that's kind of the number one issue that they're facing in their relationship. But the thing that really causes people to split up, even if their relationship is not good, even if their communication is not good, is actually something else. And we're going to share with you what that is right now. The number one reason for divorce is lack of commitment. And this is according to the National Survey on Marriage, the study by the National Fatherhood Institute of Gaithersburg, Maryland. So this is commitment. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, you're here because you're committed. Nobody wants to be told, don't tell me I'm going to have to do something else. We really thought long and hard about this. Rivka and I talked about this, and we were talking about this, and we were thinking, do we really want to talk about commitment? As important as it is, some people feel that it sounds perhaps that we're just like going to tell you, you're not committed enough to your relationship, or people are going to feel bad, and we don't want people to walk away thinking we're kind of hitting them over their head, blaming them for their problems, and saying they're just not committed enough, and even if they would be, that things would be better. That's not really what we're here to tell you about tonight. And we want to explore I think and you can share with us your story, but just based on some of the groups of readers that we have on our website, and the communications we've had with them over the years, we are aware of some of the stories that you might be having in your personal relationship. So, for example, you may be saying that I'm the one who's committed. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here on this webinar tonight. Of course, you're committed. That you're here spending an hour of your time. You're probably tired, a long day, and you're spending your time focusing on your relationship. It's your spouse that you feel that's not committed. Your spouse is the one who doesn't want to come to counseling or doesn't want to work on the relationship, but you're definitely committed. So you definitely don't want to be told that you need to be committed to the relationship. Or it could be that you and your spouse are committed. It could be you're both on the call, or even if you're not, that you both are committed to the relationship. You don't want to get divorced, but your relationship is just not as good as you'd like it to be. You don't feel so fulfilled, but you are committed to staying together. So being told that commitment is important is not necessarily going to make it for you. And finally, you may not be fully committed. You may have one foot out the door. You feel like you've tried everything, but it's your spouse's fault. They're the one who needs to change. So the last thing you want to be told is that you need to do something. But what we're going to do tonight, again, is not to blame you for anything or tell you that you have to be more committed, but to explore the importance of commitment, what makes couples commit, what makes couples cease to commit, and how the relationship wow that we learned can really allow you to commit in a whole new way. And when you can recommit in a whole new way, your relationship can transform. And even if your spouse is not fully on board yet, you'll be able to see your relationship in a whole new way and really be committed to sticking it out for the long haul.
I guess I'm wondering, should we ask people if they think they're committed to their marriage? Do you want to ask that question?
We could if you feel comfortable. I mean, I know we could. We're not going to say anyone's name, but if you feel comfortable, if you want to say that, you can.
I guess I'm curious if most people out there are kind of committed. Would you say you're 100% committed? Would you say you have one foot out the door?
So some of you are committed. Some of them say that you're wondering about what if your spouse is not committed? Some of you are both committed.
And it's okay if you're not, because it's maybe not something we necessarily want to advertise. You might actually be feeling kind of wishy-washy inside. Like you think you're committed, you're interested, but things haven't been that great. So maybe not.
Right. A lot of times it's, yeah, great. Some people want a little bit better, even though they're committed. Some of you feel that you're the one who's the only one that's committed. The other one's not. Some of you said that both of you are committed. Some of you have partial commitment, one foot out the door. So even if you're fully committed, even if both of you are fully committed, we think that this information is going to be very helpful because it's just going to be able to give you a new, fresh lens to view your relationship. A lot of people, if you've been married for years, it's helpful to have a new way of looking at your relationship, a new, fresh way of looking, a new perspective, to be able to make your relationship even better. So let's explore, why do people stay committed? Why do people stay in a marriage? So there are all sorts of reasons why people stay in a relationship. So we're having a screen just. So the common one is children. So a lot of times people stay together for the kids. They may even, sometimes they get divorced when the kids leave the house. But even if they stay together, but they really feel it's important to stay together. And all of these things it's a very noble thing to stay together for your children because, we know the effects of divorce on families and how devastating that can be for kids. Finances. Somebody told me today, they said it's the reason they're still together after 40 years is because they don't have the money, because it's cheaper for them. It's cheaper for them. It's cheaper for them to stay together than to get divorced.
Hold on one second. I think I just lost. Can you all still hear me? I just lost the control panel. Here we go. Can everybody still hear me okay? Still hear us? Yes. Okay.
Okay,
Good.
fine. So we can move that
Let's
up
get
if you
them
want.
back together. Okay.
Okay. So then you have finances. The truth is, divorce is just too expensive. Sometimes when people complain about the cost of counseling, I tell them that it's cheaper than divorce attorneys. Besides the fact you have to split up your assets, so that's a strong reason why people stay together in a relationship. Sometimes it's peer pressure. What would people think if you got divorced? What would your parents think? What would your siblings, in-laws, friends? Then there's just negative beliefs about divorce. A lot of us feel that divorce is not something that's, we should aspire to in a relationship, and we should stay together because that's what that commitment that we made. And then finally, there's a fear of the future. You don't know you're comfortable with what's going on. As painful as it might be in the here and now in the relationship, the fear of something different is even more scary. So these are all reasons why people stay together. However, if you are staying together for these reasons, for kids or for money, those things are not necessarily enough in the long run, because if things get really bad, then they're not necessarily going to be what you need to keep you together. You must have a real desire to be with your spouse. Otherwise, when times get tough, you're going to bolt. So when you have this real desire to be with your spouse, you're able to endure any challenges that you have in your relationship. And we all have challenges in our relationships. But when you commit because you want to be with your spouse, you put your relationship first, even if it means sometimes self-sacrifice and doing things that you don't want to because you're doing it for the good of the relationship. So this is what we really want to aspire to have, a real desire to be with our spouse. That's what's going to help you in the long run. And many of you, I believe, do have that real desire to be with your spouse. However, there's some of you on this call that might not have that desire. So for example, what if you've fallen out of love? People wrote us before the call. My spouse said they've fallen out of love. How can they commit? What if you think your spouse is the problem? Sometimes some of you on the call, you're committed, you're working on the relationship, but you think your spouse is the one who's not, or Some people feel like they've married the wrong person, that or that they would have been better with someone else. These are common doubts that people have. And if you're in pain, you might not have the wherewithal to stay in the relationship. You may no longer be fully committed to being with your spouse. And when the going gets tough, these questions become a killer for a lot of relationships. If it's my spouse's fault, or if I married the wrong person, there's really no reason to be committed to working on this marriage, because there's nothing that's going to change. My spouse doesn't want to change, then, or I married the wrong person and made a mistake. So there's nothing I can do but leave and find Mr. or Mrs. Right. So the only thing that you can do differently if you're in this situation with these lingering doubts is to really see things from a different perspective. And that's what happened when we started having some of those doubts too, early on. And it was quite scary and painful because we really had high hopes for our relationship, and we never would have thought we'd experience any conflict. We were a little bit naive in the beginning, and even later on when we had a rough patch in our relationship, um, we were a little bit surprised, and it was really
Maybe
hard.
a lot surprised.
We were a lot surprised. It was really scary, and it was painful. But what got us back on track? We were able to recommit to our relationship because we discovered this one relationship well. So that even though the one that we discovered in the beginning of our relationship when we first went to Imago therapy is the same well that we reminded ourselves of when we had a rough patch later on, and that's what got us through that. When we understood this well, everything began to make sense. Sometimes we forget about it, but when we become aware of it and conscious of it, it all made sense. We understood why we were suffering and we had hopes that things could actually be better in our relationship. So what is it that got us back on track? What is it that we discovered? The secret agenda of relationships. So we're going to share with you the secret. So it's not such a secret, but it's the unconscious agenda. Every relationship has an unconscious agenda. And when you can become aware of that unconscious agenda of your relationship, of relationships in general, and specifically of your relationship, everything will make sense in an instant. They say that hindsight is 20/20. Well, it's like seeing your entire life in a video screen, flipping through your eyes in a few minutes. Everything just makes sense. Everything that ever happened to you, it all makes sense when you have this important piece of information. So when you understand the secret agenda, then there's a reason why you picked your spouse, and there's a reason why you're fighting now. So let's explore, why did you pick your spouse? What made them stand out over everyone else you may have dated? There was some type of feeling that you had, something special, a feeling that you might not be able to put your finger on. And a lot of us we could have gone through a list and say, these are the things that I found in my spouse that made me know that they were the one for me. And we consciously have an idea of what that was. But there's something special that we felt. Whether you had a romantic relationship, and you quote unquote fell in love, or whether you just, someone mentioned about an arranged marriage, whether you had a marriage, at least depending on a lot of what we may call arranged marriages in some societies, they do have a chance to meet each other a few times and they do get to refuse. We'll explain a little about what happens if it was completely arranged and you never met before and you never really had a say. We'll get to that a little bit later, but at least for those of you who may have had a marriage that was, like a blind date, and then you met a few times and you had to make a decision, there was something that you felt about this person that you did not necessarily feel with other people. And that's what we're looking for, that special connection, that special pull that you felt towards that person. There is something, and there's a reason why you felt that towards your spouse and that you didn't find that with anyone else. And the reason that's so is that they were your imago match. So what is imago? So some people think it's Japanese, but actually it's Latin. Imago means image in Latin. And what this means is that we all have an unconscious image of our ideal partner, kind of this phantom partner that we're searching for. And although you may have had your list of what you were looking for in a spouse, this is something that's on an unconscious level. So you're looking for that, and that's why you may have rejected other people and you picked your spouse. What is this image? The image is a composite of the positive and negative characteristics of our primary caretakers. So meaning that your spouse is going to remind you of your parents, of some of the great characteristics and some of the negative characteristics. So they're going to feel familiar. And it makes sense that we're going to be attracted to something that feels familiar. So as we say in imagotherapy, marriage is the unfinished business of childhood. It's a chance to relive childhood, but to actually get it right this time. So what happens is we fall in love with somebody, or we pick somebody who's going to help us recreate what was familiar and actually get it right. But the thing we have to do is to get conscious about it. If we're unconscious about it, then we actually might experience more pain than we would have normally, and then if we were with someone else. So this person has the potential to cause the greatest amount of connection and healing for us, but also the greatest amount of pain, which we'll explain. Do you
I
want to
just
say
wanted to
something?
say that this is, for some of you, this is an entirely new concept, and for some of you, you've heard this before. And I want to say that it might sound simplistic, like, oh gosh, I married my mother. But really, I want you to know that it's not so simplistic. So it's not that your father, let's say, wasn't a good listener, and so you married somebody who wasn't a good listener. It's very, Shlomo, how would you just,
Oh, it could be that
it
too,
could
but
be
yeah.
that, but it could also be the flip side. It could be so many things, and it doesn't have to be your direct caretakers like your mother and father. It could be a grandparent. It's not, just, oh, I married my mother. So it might not even be something that a lot of people will say, well, that how could that be true? I married somebody who's the complete opposite
Oh,
of.
I worked so hard to find somebody who would be different than my mother or my father.
Right. So it's not always something that's very clear cut and dry. So if it sounds very, simplistic to you, know that it's actually not. And if you do a little bit more research on this and we can, point you in the right direction, you'll find that it's actually an amazing concept. And it's not, I just want you to know that it's not just as simple as, oh gosh, I buried my mother.
And your spouse could be a composite of your parents. So you might have some of the traits from one parent and some of the traits from another parent. But we found this. I mean, obviously, we found that this helped us understand our relationship, and we'll explain a little bit more about that. But also, we've seen this time and time again with the couples that we work with, and all the other imago therapists around the world are finding this with the couples they work with. So um, we can't separate ourselves from our childhood. It's impossible. We don't exist in a bubble. So those people who might say this sounds too Freudian or more interested in the here and now, again, we're not trying to harp on the past, but it helps us see the big picture, as we'll explain in a moment. So we all have what we call unmet childhood needs, or sometimes we call them even childhood wounds. Some of us may have had bad parents, so we may have felt wounded in many different ways. Even if we had good parents, there's certain needs that may not have been met. So, for example, those of you who are parents and have a baby or have had babies before, you know that when a baby cries, there are many different reasons why the baby might be crying, but because the baby can't talk, you don't necessarily know what they need. You can guess, maybe it's time you haven't fed them in a certain number of hours, so maybe they need to eat, but it's not always clear. So they could need to eat, they could need to be changed, they could be tired, they need to be, there are many different reasons. So similarly, and if you have multiple children, or depending on the type of children you have, you're just not going to be able to give your all to every single child all the time. So there are going to be things that your child's just not going to get. And some of us who, if we're not good parents, um, we might actually be called damaging our kids, and and not really being there for them in the best way. I'm not here to scare all of you who are parents to make you think that you're doomed, but definitely if you can get conscious about it, you're going to do better job for the next generation, and your kids will not have to deal with some of the challenges that you have. So we're looking unconsciously for a spouse that's going to help us meet those needs that we didn't get growing up. And all of us have things that we need. So what happens is it's not really so easy because, as we said before, the one who can heal us the most is the one who can hurt us the most. And the reason that is that when we pick our spouse and we feel like, wow, this is the one who will make my life so much better, I feel whole, I feel complete. So when that person who's so close to you winds up wounding you in the same way you felt wounded, or they're not meeting the needs that you thought they were going to meet when you first met them. Like someone called me today and they said, the person that I met is not the person, is a completely different person from the one I who I'm living with now as a spouse. So this is very common. It's so devastating. It's so painful because we had such high hopes and now they've been darted. Um, the other thing is that the thing that's most difficult for our spouse is the hardest thing for them to give. So the reason this happens is it's for the purpose of growth and healing. That basically, if it were so easy for everyone to meet each other's needs, then no one would have any struggles and everyone would be happy. But the truth is that the challenge that we experience in relationship is an opportunity for both people to grow. So, for example, in a simplistic example is, um, let's say, actually, it's not simplistic. Let's say someone needs more physical affection in a relationship, and the other person has a hard time giving it. So the thing that they need most from their spouse is that physical affection. But the problem is that particular person they married actually has a hard time giving it, and they have a story for why that is based on their own childhood. So the growth edge for them is to be able to be more physically affectionate. That's what the other person needs to heal. So the frustration that we have with our spouse actually compels our spouse to be able to grow and to heal them, help us heal ourselves, our need, meaning we need the more physical affection, but also become a more whole and complete person. So by one spouse, by the wife complaining that her husband is not doesn't give her enough hugs, it it allows for the husband to help meet her needs, but also it allows him for him to go beyond his comfort zone and grow and become, a more affectionate person. So that's just one example of many different examples of how the thing that we need most from our spouse is the hardest thing for them to give us, but it's really the opportunity for growth, and that's where the growth happens in relationships.
And I just want to say that's one of the most amazing things that I found from the work that we did and that we continue to do is that not only does doing a session of imago therapy help the person who comes in, wanting to share, it also works. The spouse on the receiving end also is able to heal. So you're both able to heal at the same time while in relationship together. So for those of you thinking, maybe my spouse, needs to go talk to somebody because I'm more, self-aware, but maybe he or she needs to go speak to someone. Well, no, actually, a more, what would you say, a more conscious way of becoming a more conscious person is doing this work together, if possible. Now, some of you have a spouse that's completely unwilling, and we'll address that as well.
But so we want to explain that there's a reason why the conflict happens, and we're going to explain in the next slide about the relationship stages. So this is what happens in relationships, and I think most of us probably can relate to this. Relationships start off great. The romantic love, that's the attraction that hooks us in. It anesthetizes us to the pain. A lot of us, if we knew what we would have gotten into, we would have never gotten married because it's just too painful. Um, Not everyone, but a lot of people, at least people that are suffering right now. But they did have that moment of attraction. Otherwise, they would have never walked down the aisle. But at some point after they commit and get married, couples enter the power struggle. And the power struggle is really the eternal conflict that most couples face. Um, Couples either check out, they have kind of what we call an invisible divorce. So maybe they're not having a lot of maybe they're not having even a lot of they might be in a lot of conflict, or they might have not so much conflict, but they're just kind of checked out from each other, or people actually decide to just divorce and end the relationship. So our goal in the work that we do is to help couples get out of the power struggle. That's the real goal. We want to reach what's called real love, or the conscious marriage. And consciousness is really what frees us from the struggle, because we can make sense of everything. We're able to see, instead of living in this struggle where we're doubting and not really committed to the relationship because we just don't think this is the right relationship for us anymore, or we think we made the wrong decision. Once we understand what's going on, become conscious, then all the issues kind of disappear, and we see what the agenda is. We see that secret relationship agenda that we mentioned, and it's a huge wow, because it makes sense of everything that's going on in your relationship. Now, it doesn't necessarily change. It's not necessarily going to change the behavior instantly, but it's going to help you reframe your relationship. So conflict, so let's explain a little bit more about conflict. So conflict is for the purpose of growth and healing. It's not just something that, unfortunate occurrence in our relationship or, bad luck that we had to have a lousy marriage, but it's really for the purpose of growth and healing. And when you can kind of integrate that into your psyche and really understand that and think about that, then it really makes a huge difference, because anytime you have an argument, you can realize, what's the opportunity for growth here? This isn't a reason why we picked the wrong person. It's actually proof that I picked the right person. And especially when we discovered that the very conflict we experienced was tailor-made for us, based on our whole imago and based on what we were looking for and what we didn't get growing up, we were able to recommit. We were able to see that big picture, that unconscious agenda, and we were really, we were sold on our relationship. We knew for sure that, without a doubt, that this relationship we're definitely meant to be, and we could see it from, it was almost unbelievable how every issue we did have with each other went back to something deeper, and that all we really needed at this point was to learn the skills that would actually help us on that journey towards a conscious relationship.
By the way, this picture is taken from a movie trailer that we have on our website. You can watch it at another time. And right before these smiles, you'll actually see us having, I guess, an argument. And you'll, in the exact same kitchen, in the exact, that exact setting, we had an argument prior to that picture, and that picture was taken after. So if you want to see that video, definitely, after this, you can go visit our website and see that.
And I wanted to share maybe some examples of, how we felt that, if you think a good example of how you felt like the conflict was kind of tailor-made based on our own imago.
Well,
that would be helpful for
one thing I was
listeners.
thinking is that when I was a kid, we have a lot of information on my story on our website, but basically, just for those of you that aren't familiar, my parents divorced when I was 12. And it was a very, very nasty, nasty, nasty divorce. And my husband comes from, a beautiful home with his parents have over 30 years, really nice marriage. And I grew up in a very reactive house, screaming, yelling all the time. And he grew up in a pretty calm house. So when I would get angry, he was completely shocked because I would yell and scream. And that was completely, unfamiliar to him. But anyhow, one of the small parts of my childhood was I remember there was my father used to come in my room and sometimes talk for like 3 hours, kind of going over the day, but justifying a lot of his behavior that he took during the divorce. Wasn't always on the up and up. Some of the, divorce lawyers tend to advise their clients to do things that, kind of purposely will, harm the other party, unfortunately. So he'd come into my room and he'd talk for like really no exaggeration, 3 hours at times, kind of sort of justifying why he would do what he did. So when I met my wonderful husband, our first date, we walked around Washington, D.C., and we talked for 7 hours on the date. And I have to say most of it was, well, you enjoyed talking. So one of the things I loved hearing my husband.
And I was looking for someone who would listen.
So I loved hearing him talk on that first date for 7 hours. But after we got married, when he wanted to talk, I could not listen. I just had this physical aversion. Sometimes he wanted to talk and talk, and I had this aversion that I really could not.
Yeah.
I felt trapped, and it was bothering me, and really I just felt so stuck. I just was like, what is going on? And when we did, I think maybe our first or second session with in Imago, the therapist had said to us, I described my frustration, or maybe he described his frustration that his wife, couldn't listen to anything he was saying. I think the therapist said, does this remind you of anything? And I thought, you know what? It actually reminds me of me sitting on my bed for 3 hours, not being able to leave my bedroom, having to hear somebody talk. And that was such an eye opener for both of us.
Right, because instead of thinking that, just to let you know, I didn't talk for 7 hours. but I think that
instead of you thinking I was a selfish,
or that you
narcissistic
couldn't care less about
person,
me, or
right,
didn't want to hear what I have to say, right? And that's what, when we first, the imago, the thing that when we first were in the romantic stage, I felt that Rivka was a really good listener, and she was really interested in hearing what I had to say. But then once we got married and we started experiencing conflict, then this was one of the issues. So that when you understood my need for feeling heard, my story behind that, and then when I understood your need for why it bothered you so much and why, then I was able to see it from a different perspective.
That was really an eye-opener.
So we want to move on to, and we have a lot of different more examples we could share with you, but this is only an hour tonight. So just one thing, for those of you who don't feel like your spouse reminds you of your parents, or maybe you had an arranged marriage, we recreate the circumstances of our childhood no matter what. Harlow Hendricks explained this with regards to arranged marriages, that in order to become, our agenda is to become, our agenda is to become more whole and complete. And so even if you didn't pick the person, meaning unconsciously pick them and fall in love with them, you're either going to project or provoke. So for example, let's say I was looking for a good listener. So it could be I fell in love with somebody who was not a good listener. Or it could be that they were an okay listener, but I project and I started telling myself this story that they're really not a good listener. Or I could actually provoke them. I could keep complaining, you don't listen to me, I don't feel heard, even if they do listen, to the point where they just decide they don't want to listen anymore. So we recreate the nightmare in order to be able to work through it and get conscious about it and share our story and go through that. So just briefly to explain what we've covered so far is that we talked about the importance of commitment. Why that's really the number one ingredient for a prerequisite really to a successful relationship that lasts. And we talked about the various challenges to commitment when things are painful in our relationship and we think that maybe we married the wrong person. And then we talked about that the real secret of commitment is changing your perspective. And that involves knowing the secret agenda of a relationship, making sense of why you picked each other and why you're fighting, understanding the imago, the unconscious image you had, the unmet childhood needs that you're hoping to get fulfilled in your relationship, the relationship stages that you are going through together. Sorry, we just lost the slide. And how you went through those stages, and then how the conflict you are experiencing in the power struggle is really for the purpose of growth and healing. And when you become aware of that, you can start going down the road to the real love. And
let me get the control panel right back.
And we're going to share with you a story about what happens when people commit. And this was quite touching story that I think it was 2 or 3 summers ago. I had a couple that came for a 2-day intensive, and they really were not sure if they should stay together. This was kind of their last-ditch effort to see if their relationship could work. And the husband kept complaining. His wife, they read our book, they learned about the commitment, and they said, I just don't think she's really committed. And he thought that they'd be able to work through anything and be happy if they really were just both in. So they start sharing and having a dialogue about the pain they're experiencing and explaining the deeper reasons for it. And she just starts blurting out and says, "I'm committed." And he starts crying and he says, "What did you say?" She goes, "I'm committed to our relationship." And he's like, he mirrored it back and he said, "What I heard you say is you're committed to our relationship." And it was so touching because it was really the beginning of the complete shift in their relationship. After years of thinking that their relationship was going nowhere, they decided that they're going to make it work. And to this day, it has worked for them to be able to move forward and create a successful relationship, even after they were married probably about 20 plus years at the time. And that's really the relationship wow that's transformed our life and the lives of couples worldwide and has allowed even the worst relationships to recommit. And as much as we think that commitment will actually trap us, it feels kind of stifling, it actually frees us to really be present in relationship, as we share in this,
I love this quote.
Starbucks
The
cup.
irony of commitment is that it is deeply liberating. In work, and play, and love, the act frees you from the tyranny of your internal critic, from the fear that likes to dress itself up and parade around as rational hesitation. To commit is to remove your head as the barrier to your life. Think about it. And we're going to come back to that. Committing is freeing. It's really an amazing concept.
And it's deeper than just a Starbucks cup, but we like the quote. So what are we coming out with now? Understand the wow is really understanding why you're experiencing the conflict you're facing. When you do that, you'll have an easier time committing because it's not about being better elsewhere. It's all about loving the one that you're with. So you're off to a great start. This commitment will redirect you and get the energy flowing in the right direction. Understanding the secret agenda of relationships is going to really help you commit and move in that direction but you're still going to need more knowledge about relationships and practical skills you can apply. And that's really what we want to share with you as we're closing. We're coming towards the end today about the importance of that commitment is really the first step of our book, The 5 Steps to a Healthy and Happy Marriage, that commitment is really the first step. And many of you have read the book already, but that's the first step. And that's really what you need. And the shift in perspective will help you. It will help you see things differently. It will help you recommit to the relationship and reinvigorate the relationship. And just to briefly share, there are 4 other steps that we talk about. Seal your exits, meaning that's curbing activities that prevent you from being fully present, that distract you from the relationship or negative influences. Detox your marriage is where you learn about removing the negativity, learning how to ask for what you need and channel your frustrations, dealing with anger. Acknowledge the other is learning how to really communicate and create safety in the relationship. And then love infusions is positive ways to bring more love into your marriage. And then we don't want to forget about other great things like the 4 critical moments, the 5 love languages, and lots of other amazing relationships and ideas and solutions. So where can you get those skills to take you from what you've gotten tonight and the tools that really will help you be successful and move on the path to really transforming your relationship? So again, in only 1 hour, we've covered these 8 steps. We talked about the importance of commitment, the challenges you might have, the secret about changing your perspective, understanding the secret agenda of relationships, why you're experiencing what you're experiencing, why you picked your spouse, your imago, and the unmet childhood needs, relationship stages, and that conflict is really an opportunity for connection. But if you really want to understand how to apply this to the ever greater way, is to check out our marriage boot camp. And we're going to explain what that is right now. This marriage boot camp will help you continue to see your spouse differently, not just with the information we've provided, but which hopefully by now you do see your relationship differently, but to actually experience it and to really fall in love again with your spouse. So here's what other couples are saying about some of the ideas that we've been teaching couples.
After going through your program, I feel like a completely different person. Although we have spent years in therapy, we were still on the verge of divorce. The skills that we've learned have helped us break the vicious cycle of conflict, and we are actually able to enjoy each other's company again. Amazing. This was a very long one. I'm not going to...
Yeah, well, just to summarize it, because there was a couple I worked with once, and they could not do counseling. It wasn't working out for them. They just couldn't afford it. They came one time, and they wanted to check out our program, the 5 steps, the mastery program. And so they listened to it, and they saw a blog post. We said, how do you know when your marriage is over? And we basically debunked all the reasons that couples should get divorced. And we said, no matter how bad your relationship is, it can heal. And she wrote me and she said, I want you to know, I hadn't heard from her in a year or two, that we were definitely doomed to fail. But you can read it on the slides. But basically, we were at the point where, the husband threw burning grease on her face, and it was a really horrible situation.
He was put in jail. She got sick. She discovered there was a sewage leak in her bedroom. That was the turning point. She had realized that her husband, without her knowledge, was listening to our marriage counseling program on his cell phone. Things shifted.
And then they wound up
she couldn't
expecting their first baby, which
right. She just wanted us to share with everyone that they had the worst marriage ever, and if they could be helped, that anyone could be helped. So I thought that was a great story. And then this one, we hear this a lot, that people often feel like we're speaking exactly to them. And I'd love for you to write in the chat, do you feel that we were speaking to your situation? Because everybody's kind of coming from a different place, and it's sometimes hard to know how to cater everything, cater what we're saying. But I think Shlomo did a fabulous job of speaking really to everyone. Right. And just put something in the question box if you feel that he was speaking to you.
And in the future, we're going to get, when on the boot camp, we're going to obviously have a chance to explain more details about various situations and what you can do. So that's going to be, we hope to be able to address more of those issues as well. So we want to share. So
we're very excited about the marriage boot camp, and we want you to know that for the next 3 Tuesdays, we're going to meet again and do what we did tonight, 1 hour to Relationship Wow. But we're going to put it We're going to spend some more time. We're not going to rush. We'll still cover things in an hour, but we're going to be able to go into so much greater detail so we can really laser focus and
and give
pinpoint.
you the practical tools. Because right now you have a shift in perspective, but there are definitely skills that we need that we need to move forward. As we said, what we needed after we discovered that wow. So we have a money back, 100% money back guarantee for 60 days because it's going to take you 3 weeks to listen to it. If you have no noticeable improvements at all to your relationship, you can get a full refund. And really, the price is only $147 for 3-hour long classes. Typically, a 90-minute counseling session, which is $225, an hour is $150. So you're going to learn all this in 3 hours for the price of one. And if you're saying I'm not going to be able to listen to the call, you will get a replay. You'll be able to listen to it at your convenience if you can't listen to it live or if you're in a different time zone. So that's you're getting a lot of value for it. And we want to offer a special bonus for you.
Remember, we
And
talked about commitment and how it's freeing and how sometimes we get into our heads rather than into our hearts. So because tonight we talked so much about commitment, we decided we really want to reward those of you that decide to commit to this process and to commit to your marriage and take action. So for the next 15 minutes, I'm gonna write the link in the chat box. Hold on one second, and then I'll tell you more. Let's see. I'm gonna send you to www.themaragerestorationproject.com/products/1 hour here. This link should work. Let me know if it works on your end or doesn't work.
if you didn't get the link, but if you go on that link and you sign up for our 3-week boot camp, in the next 15 minutes we'll give you. You're welcome to sign up for the boot camp whenever you want. You can sign up for it until even next Tuesday at 9 o'clock. But you're able to sign up for it whenever you want. But if you do sign up for it in the next 15 minutes, because you're showing the commitment to your relationship and really learning this material and mastering it, we'd like to give you a few extra bonuses. And one is that we want to give you all the webinar slides
from tonight and from all the classes.
And then a special thing which we've never really, I guess, given away for free in such mass quantities. But we want to give you as a gift our full program, the Marriage Mastery program, and that's what we alluded to that guy was listening to on his phone that made the transformation for that family. It's 5 audios, a video. This was all going to be digital download. The book that you may already have and the workbook. We normally sell the digital version for $277. We're going to give it to you free tonight for a bonus if you do sign up for
the marriage boot camp in the next 15 minutes. And here's how we're going to track everything.
If you're not listening live, we know when you've signed into the webinar. So we know, like, for example, if you sign in tomorrow, we know we can calculate if you ordered it within 15 minutes.
Well, what I'd like to do to just streamline the process is if you could email us after checking out for Marriage Bootcamp and signing up and paying, I would like you to forward us your order number that PayPal is going to send you and email us at info@themarriagerestorationproject.com, or you can put your order number in the chat box. Only us can see it, but I'd like you to email us saying, I paid, here's my order number, and then we're going to personally email you the digital copy and all the webinar slides. And you're going to get it before Tuesday, which is when the next boot camp starts. So does that make sense? I think that was pretty clear. Basically, we just want everybody to email us, whether you're listening to this live or you're listening to this via recording. I'd like you to email us with your purchase number, and we will send you your bonuses.
So we don't know when we're going to reopen the boot camp. We're with our schedule right now, especially with school and the Jewish holidays coming up. We're not really going to be able to have the time to run this anytime soon. So the next 3 weeks are going to be really the ideal time for us to be able to do this. So we want to make sure that you take advantage of this now, because especially if you listen to this and you found the material helpful, to take advantage and really commit to learning concrete skills for your relationship.
I want to say also that this is important for those of you who do not have a willing spouse, because everything you're going to hear in the boot camp, as well as in the 5-step action plan program that you're going to get free as a bonus, we talk to what we call the Lone Ranger. You are a Lone Ranger, so you don't have the participation and willingness of your spouse, and that's fine, because basically what you're going to learn is, Shlomo, how do you describe it? That
You'll learn ways to deal with your own reactivity. You'll learn ways to make the relationship safer for your spouse. You'll learn things that you can do on your own. So we've had individuals who have used this program, and they found it transformative in terms of being able to bring their spouse back into the relationship and to really make the relationship a great relationship. And sometimes, as you saw that one email that we received, that sometimes even if you have the program at home, your other spouse will wind up listening to it.
Okay, let me answer a couple questions. So when you go to the link tonight, www.themarriagerestorationproject.com/products/1 hour. Okay, it's in the chat box. I message it to all of you, so you should see my link. When you click on that link and pay for the next 3 weeks marriage boot camp, it's $147. If you do that in the next 15 minutes, we will send you via email your bonuses. So
right, at least to download. The slides will come at the end of once we're finished the 3-week boot camp.
correct.
If you do want the physical version of the program, you can contact us. That would be you could buy that separately if you don't want to get the boot camp. But if you get the boot camp, you will get the digital version free.
Right. So email us after purchase, info@themarriagerestorationproject.com. I know that the links are kind of long, so I want to give you a few minutes to do that. So we're saying that for the people that check out in the first 15 minutes, so it's now 10 o'clock, so we're going to keep this available for you for 15 minutes till 10:15. For all orders that are processed by 10:15, you will receive the very valuable bonuses that we've included for you. Now, you can still participate in Marriage Boot Camp after the 15 minutes if you feel that you need some more time, but we just really wanted to reward those of you that decided to commit to the process now and to participate in the Marriage Boot Camp. I'd like to answer questions and open it up to you for any remaining questions. I think I answered the question of my spouse, for those of you that your spouse is not involved, how do you address that? Again, you're going to learn that in the next 3 weeks, as well as in your bonus that comes to you via email.
If you do pay, I believe that
PayPal offers a 6-month payment option when you sign up for Bill Me Later.
So if anything over $100, so this is $147, you should be able to divide it into 6 monthly payments. If you are interested, some people have said that, and if it's not financially possible to pay $147 at this time, on PayPal you can divide into 6 monthly payments by doing the Bill Me Later.
We really tried to make this as affordable as possible. We're really giving you a ton of material, as you saw tonight, and a lot of time. And we do answer questions, more so in the next 3 weeks when we have a little bit more time and kind of more of a smaller group. Would anybody like to ask a question? Please feel free to ask a question and we'll see if we can answer it, and then we'll kind of close up and give you our final thoughts and goodbyes.
So we have one question. How do I get my husband to fall back in love with me? The last 2.5 weeks have been I'm sorry, the link isn't working for someone.
Oh, okay. Let me
last 2 weeks. So
let me just check on the link real quick. Let me do that.
You not share the screen? Turn the screen off, maybe.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me just read it one more time. It's www.themarriagerestorationproject.com/product/
Can you see that?
and then another /1 hour. Let me see if I can
The
show
number
you.
the number 1 and then HOUR.
How do I do this? Another window. Please move this window.
Maybe you can cut off the PowerPoint and just have this window.
Okay. Let me do that.
So we're just okay.
Can you see my screen?
Let's pause.
Oh, here we go. Oopsies. Okay, let's get back here. Sorry about that.
You have to turn off the video camera.
Okay. Can you see my screen? We are at the order form page. Please type a yes if you can see the screen.
Okay, some people said the link did work. I'm going to try to answer that question while we're doing this. You know, we
Okay, I'm not sure what people are seeing right now. People can see a pause. Oh, people can see a paused version of your screen. What does that
Could you write it in there? Could you put the link in there?
I'm going to put the link out again. Let me try that.
PPTX, that's the PowerPoint. It says screen sharing is paused.
Weird. How do you pause?
If you're in a situation where your spouse has left, you know, how do you win them back? So it's important. I mean, obviously we don't know. We'd have to know a little bit more details, and that'd be something we could have in a kind of a be hard to answer right now. But about why they left. Sometimes it's good to give people space, and then they want to come back. It really depends on, you know, on the situation, on your unique situation. And it's really painful, and sometimes it does require some patience. The hope is that you can get them on to at least be able to talk to you, and at least for the sake of your child, or for even if, let's say, they want out of the relationship, for the sake of closure, because it's important to understand why. It's not fair to just kind of, you know, leave a relationship without really processing it and going through it, because otherwise we wind up leaving and blaming someone else. And even if you can't save the marriage, you want to be able to save the relationship. So, you know, that's how I encourage couples to come in, even if one person is not sure what they want to do. But it's important to be able to have a conscious discussion about it. And we talk a lot about that in the step of acknowledge the other, about, you know, how to talk to each other, how to have a really open conversation about issues and really understand each other better. Now, the question is whether separation is good for a marriage. You know, again, probably need a little bit more information about the question. But, you know, not in general, we don't recommend people separating, because sometimes it's a slippery slope. Sometimes people get separated and they start thinking, oh, wow, I can do this on my own. On the other hand, some people do realize what they're missing, and that it gives them an incentive to come back. So again, every situation is different, but in general, we recommend to try to work on the relationship than to separate. And just so when someone just mentioned the question before that, he left and said he wasn't in love with me. There's got to be more to it than that. I don't know if he's, you know, a lot of times when people say we're not in love with, you know, I'm not in love with you anymore, there's often someone else in the picture. It just doesn't, it's not usually so abrupt. But I don't want to do this. I want to do justice to your question, but
Yeah,
did you want to say anything before? It's an important topic.
It's very important, and these are very important questions, and some of them may be better in a private session with Shlomo. But in general, we don't, I guess, Imago is different than most marriage counseling methods in that we really don't recommend separation. It's usually like a marriage a lot of counselors will say, well, maybe you should separate. But also back to the woman whose husband left, like Shlomo said, there's something else going on. Sometimes there's a midlife crisis going on. Um, and that's very hard, but it's definitely able to, recover from. And if there is an affair, it is possible to repair from an affair, and it is possible to get over an affair. And we've done it before, and that's actually one of Shlomo's specialties because it requires so much sensitivity, and that's really his strength. Okay, I'm having people tell me they're trying to order the boot camp, but the screen will not let them add it to the cart. Do you see the cart page? You should see a screen that says 1 hour to relationship wow, and then add to cart. And then, let me see if I can do that while you guys are watching. I would refresh the screen if the cart is taking too long. Okay, you can see I have a bunch of...
You only need to order one.
Yeah, you don't need to order more than one. Let me go down here. Okay, so I'm going to update the cart. If it's taking a long time, I recommend refreshing, and then proceed to checkout. Okay, so if you're trying to check out and you're trying to pay, you should see the billing details and be able to check out. And we know that you're trying, so we're going to still send you the bonuses.
Right. So if you did order, or you're trying to order and you can't make it in by 10:15, but you're trying to, and we can work out the technical difficulties, we'll still honor the bonuses because we know that you're trying.
I actually will. What I'll do is I'll send you a physical order form that if you want, you can fax it in. If you have a problem or don't feel comfortable somehow with this. Any other questions, marriage related or relationship related? We'd love to be able to give you some time. Okay, so again, if your spouse is completely unwilling, you're going to learn some tools, I don't want to call them tricks of the trade, but you're going to learn some very interesting ways to kind of pull them back. Shlomo's, one story I've heard him talk about is he had a woman call him years ago. She said her husband was completely unwilling to work on their marriage. In fact, he was a well-known marriage coach, okay, and their marriage was not good. And he was unwilling to go anywhere for help because he was a well-known marriage coach. Shlomo directed the woman to do a few things with without his participation. And what happened? She called you about a year later saying...
The relationship completely changed because she was able to work on dealing with the things that triggered him. But I think this particular question, though, is dealing with the case where you really have nothing to do with your spouse because they've left. Those two people were actually living together. If you're fighting a court case, what I often suggest is if you know somebody who can speak to them, that knows them, that has influence over them, that could at least bring them to at least talk about it or have some type of, like for the purpose of mediation, just to work things out, and be willing to at least have a few sessions or to do an intensive program to see if the relationship can stay together. That's what I generally recommend.
You're answering a very specific...
I'm asking a specific question about if you're fighting a court case and your spouse is completely disinterested, how do you proceed?
Somebody asked that question.
Right.
It's very specific.
Right. So it is very difficult because if they're not going to talk to you, it's kind of hard to change. You can always write them. You can always write them a letter, and the more that you, again, though, the more you'll learn about, the more that you can do to take responsibility. And no one's willing to get involved, right? The more that you can take responsibility and kind of, just apologize for any hurt feelings and show your sincerity, the better. If you're just kind of coming after them and saying, why aren't you giving me the time of day, then that winds up becoming a problem.
Okay, we're seeing somebody doesn't want to pay with PayPal, so
if you proceed to PayPal,
you can use a credit card.
you can use a credit card. You just said don't have a PayPal account. You can click on it.
If you prefer not to do that, we can send you via email a physical order form that you can fax right in. So if that's an issue,
Right, if it's yeah, but otherwise you can just click the pay button on here, and then it will take you to a page on PayPal, and PayPal will say, if you don't have a PayPal account, you can pay here, and they can do it with a credit card.
So Shlomo, do you have any final thoughts or closing, anything you wanted to say?
No, I realize that your questions are important, and it's so hard when you're struggling in a relationship and when you're in pain, and we can't possibly do justice in a few minutes answering the questions right now. You're welcome to contact me via email, but we do
I'll
want
put our email address in the chat for you.
But we do want to hear what you have to say, and we want to do our best to address them. Some of you have very specific issues, but a lot of the relationship principles that you'll be learning in the boot camp will help you be able to address these issues and work on them. I mean, there are all these exceptions to the rule, but in general, the principles that you learn are going to be extremely, extremely helpful.
Let me just try filling in the screen with you all to show you how this works, in case some of you are having issues. This is our address, obviously. Work address, not yours. Let's see here. Create an account. I think we already have.
Can I see this?
Okay, so
if instead of going, you can either put in your PayPal account, or you can go, it says pay with a debit card, a credit card, or PayPal credit, and then you click to that, and then you should be able to enter in your debit or credit card information. And
right.
Oh, right.
Okay, it looks like it worked.
Right, and then those of you who are dating, this will definitely, we do have a special report about dating that we could share with you, that we could send you if you're interested. But these principles will help you definitely understand relationships. It will definitely help you date better, because you'll be more conscious and more aware of how you can work through kind of the rough patches that happen in dating that kind of prevent you from going deeper and committing to a relationship.
And the bonus that you're going to receive, the 5-step action plan program, we call it Marriage Mastery. That's going to be phenomenal for somebody dating and for somebody who's maybe engaged or preparing for maybe a second marriage, because you're really going to go through the 5 steps and hear us on the audio and the video learn how to prepare for a great marriage. So that bonus is going to be very, very helpful. So that's all the time we have for answering questions. You're going to get a lot more time with us in the next 3 weeks.
And if you have any questions, or if you're still having trouble ordering, just please email us at info@themarriagerestorationproject.com, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. And you will be receiving, once you sign up, we'll be receiving emails reminding you about the time for the boot camp, and then you'll get and if you can't listen to it at that time, you'll get a replay link that will enable you to listen to it at your convenience.
And please feel free to share. We're going to send you the replay. Please feel free to share this with anybody that you know, friends or family who could benefit. And it doesn't need to be, something that you're embarrassed to do. It doesn't need to be, insulting to them. Just, hey, I thought you'd enjoy this relationship material. Pass it on. We want to help as many couples out there that we can stay together and stay together happily. So have a great night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks for joining us.